history is written in ink, but at Stalingrad, it was written in the blood of 2 million men. 1942, Hitler's war machine was hungry. It needed oil, and it needed to destroy the city bearing Stalin's name. August 23rd, the sky turned black. 1,000 planes dropped enough fire to turn a city into a furnace. 40,000 civilians died in the first hour. The survivors didn't flee. They went underground. The Germans expected a quick surrender. They had conquered Paris in weeks. They thought this was over. But a ruined city is a sniper's paradise. Every pile of bricks, every sewer pipe, became a fortress. This wasn't war as the world knew it. The Germans called it Rattenkrieg, rat warfare. The front line wasn't miles wide. It was the thickness of a single brick wall. By October, the smell of death was everywhere. The dead couldn't be buried. The ground was too hard with heat and debris. The Germans were winning, street by street, but they were bleeding out. Every inch cost 1,000 lives. And then, the wind changed. The first snowflake fell. The Russian winter had arrived. The Germans were in summer uniforms. Their oil froze in the tanks. Their bread had to be cut with saws. While they shivered, the Soviets were secretly building a trap, a ring of steel. 1 million men strong. Operation Uranus. In just 4 days, the hunter became the hunted. 250,000 Germans were surrounded. The Cauldron was closed. No food, no fuel. Hitler ordered them to stand and die. Surrender is not an option, he said from his warm palace. But a man cannot fight the cold, and he cannot fight hunger. The nightmare was only beginning. The Kessel, the Cauldron, was a 30-mile wide prison of ice. 250,000 men trapped in a circle of death. The German Luftwaffe promised to fly in food. They needed 700 tons a day. They barely delivered 30. Men began to starve. They lived on 50 grams of bread a day, mostly sawdust and floor sweepings. The horses were the first to go, then the dogs. Then, the things men do not speak of. The Soviet speakers played a rhythmic beat. Tick, 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 followed by every 7 seconds, a German dies. It wasn't just a war of bullets anymore. It was a war of nerves. Men lost their minds in the silence. The hospitals were worse than the trenches. No medicine, no heat. Doctors performing surgery in the dark. Amputations were done without anesthesia. The screams were the only music in the city. Hitler sent a message to General Paulus: there is no surrender. The 6th Army will hold its position to the last man. Paulus knew the truth. He was being sacrificed, not for victory, but for Hitler's pride. Outside the city, the Soviet steamroller was growing. Fresh divisions from Siberia were arriving every day. They were Fédération, and they were ready for revenge for their fallen city. By January 1943, the German line began to snap. The Soviets were squeezing the Cauldron shut. Potomnik Airfield, the last link to the outside world, was captured. There was no more mail. German soldiers would run toward the last planes, begging to be taken home. Many fell from the landing gear. The supply drops were a joke. Once, the planes dropped 5 tons of pepper and 2 tons of condoms instead of food. The irony was bitter. They were dying of hunger. And the Reich sent them seasoning. Death was no longer an enemy. For many, it was the only friend left in Stalingrad. Let's talk about Pavlov's house, a single apartment building that became a graveyard for an empire. Sergeant Pavlov and his men held it for 60 days. They turned every window into a gun nest. The Germans attacked it every day with tanks and artillery. Nothing worked. On German maps, the house was marked as a fortress. They couldn't believe it was held by only a few men. Then there was the grain elevator, a massive concrete tower where the fighting was done at point-blank range. The smoke was so thick you couldn't see your hands. You fought by the sound of footsteps and breathing. A German diary found later said, "The Russians are not men. They are something made of cast iron stiles." Stalin's order number 227, not a step back. If you retreated, you were shot by your own side. The choice was simple: die fighting the Germans, or die as a coward. Most chose the Germans. The Volga River was a bottleneck. Thousands of reinforcements were sent across in open boats. Most didn't survive the crossing. The river was literally red with the blood of 19-year-olds. But for every Soviet soldier who died, two more took his place. Russia was bleeding, but it wasn't empty. The German Sixth Army, once the pride of the world, was now a ghost. January 30th, 1943, Hitler promotes Paulus to Field Marshal. It was a death sentence. No German field marshal had ever been captured alive. Hitler expected Paulus to commit suicide. Paulus looked at his starving men, and he looked at the ruins. He decided he would not die for a lie. The next morning, Soviet soldiers entered his headquarters in the basement of a department store. The war in Stalingrad was over, but the horror for the survivors was just beginning. 91,000 men marched into the Siberian blizzard. Only 5,000 would ever return home. The battle was over, but the ground was so filled with metal that even today, nothing grows in certain spots. 2 million lives erased. The tide of the war didn't turn in France. It turned here, in the dust. This is the reality of history. Hard, cold, and unforgiving. This is Dustofmedia. We tell the stories the world tries to bury. We are at 93 subscribers, 7 more to hit 100. Join the family. Subscribe to keep the history alive. Don't let the dust settle